Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. Prime Minister Frondell Stewart has hailed the Oystins Fish Festival as a model for other festivals in the Caribbean. He says the festival captures elements of the Barbadian culture and traditions through its activities such as the fish boning competition. His comments came at the festival's opening ceremony last evening.
Since its inception in 1977, the festival has earned its place as one of the most creative of Barbados' 7 major national festivals, becoming a model for other neighboring CARICOM states. It is heartening to note that the stalls within the fishing complex, which are mainly managed by fisherfolk and their families during the festival, are more than 90% operated by low-income persons from surrounding districts.
Mr. Stewart also revealed his government will be seeking to honor the festival's late founder and former Prime Minister, Sir Harold Bernard St. John.
No discussion of post-independence Oystins would be complete without reference to the role of Sir Harold in its transformation. I've been discussing with the present Member of Parliament for the area, the Honourable John Boyce, the most fitting way in which I think that the life, the times, and the contribution of the late Sir Harold Bernard St. John QC should be memorialized. The Cabinet will be pronouncing on that matter very, very shortly.
Well, what started as a peaceful Easter Sunday soon turned to a fiery tragedy which has left a St. Michael community in mourning. Sharika Griffith reports.
Residents of Clark's Road, Freehill, Blackrock, St. Michael began the day as they would any other Sunday. Some attended church while others prepared various dishes for Sunday lunch. But by 9:30, things took a turn for the worse as the alarm was sounded that a house was on fire. 3 fire tenders and 12 officers from the St. James, Probin Street and Worthing fire stations under the command of Divisional Officer Errol Gaskin responded to the blaze. When the smoke had cleared, a man was dead, 2 houses destroyed, and 2 others damaged. Police PRO Inspector Roland Cobbler says firemen were already on the scene when police arrived. The victims' charred remains were discovered in one of the burnt-out houses while firemen were conducting their initial assessment.
Criminal investigations revealed that sometime around 9:28, police received a report of a house fire at Clark's Road, Freehill, Blackrock, St. Michael. On responding, fire officers were already on the scene extinguishing this fire and reported to the police that a charred remains of a human being was in one of the houses. Our investigations are continuing in this matter.
While police have confirmed the victim was the 56-year-old owner of one of the destroyed houses, his identity has so far been withheld at the request of his family. Relatives and neighbors of the deceased declined to speak, but the somber looks on their faces spoke volumes. The origin of the fire is yet to be determined. Sharika Griffith, Cbc News.
Firemen were kept busy today as for the second time in as many days, motorists traveling along the ABC highway were forced to maneuver through smoky conditions. Here's Sharika Griffith again.
Fire officers from the Probin Street Fire Station were kept busy today by a suspected arsonist as they were called to a fire at Chapel Gap Haggate Hall not once, not twice, but 3 times. The first call came in at 8:22 this morning with reports of a grass and rubbish fire in the area uphill from the bus's statue. Residents sprang into action, using garden hoses to wet their properties closest to the flames until the firemen arrived. The fire was brought under control and a crisis had been averted. Or so they thought, as by midday, homeowners once again found themselves running for their hoses as flames were spotted in the same grassy area. By then, the wind had picked up and the fire was soon raging, showering ash on passing vehicles and nearby houses. The same tender and officers again responded to the call, doused the flames with water and returned to the station. However, a third call would come, forcing the fire officers to once again rush to Haggate Hall. Leading Fire Officer Cullymore says it is likely that someone was trying to clear the lot and was intentionally restarting the fire. No property damage was reported. Sharika Griffith, Cbc News.
Anglican Bishop, the Most Reverend Dr. John Holder, says the Easter message of hope is particularly relevant at this time as the country goes through a difficult period. And he's encouraging Barbadians to never give up hope, regardless of their situation.
The powerful message of Easter speaks to us in a special way at this time in our country. Amidst the waves of bad news and uncertainty about the future, like the women in the Easter story, we can share with those who are overwhelmed by these conditions the positive message that there can be light and life and hope where the love seems to be absent.
Thousands of local Christians today flocked to churches across the island to celebrate Easter Sunday. It's the time Christians worldwide celebrate Jesus' resurrection. One of the churches of choice was the St. George Parish Church, where children wore Easter bonnets. Reverend John Rogers reminded the congregation the Easter story still remains relevant in today's world.
The empty tomb in this particular story represents those situations in our lives, those experiences that put us in very dark places. Sometimes lead us to states of depression. Sometimes lead us to states where we cannot see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I believe that we've all been there at some point in time in our lives. But what the story tells us is that the empty tomb does not write the final story.
Rogers is also challenging Barbadians to use the period to reflect on the way women and children are treated.
One statistic suggests that in the Caribbean, 1 in every 3 girls experiences some form of sexual molestation before she grows up. 1 in 3, 33%. What we are really creating are broken dolls. Girls who cannot grow up with the freedom with which God has created them to grow, whose life's experiences always leave them on the edge, looking out for the next person who is seeking to exploit them or damage their lives.
More news after the break.